Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. That's giving all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High God, whose name is Yahweh. Ba'ashem meaning coming in the name of, and Yahweh Shai, who the world calls Jesus Christ. Um, all praises to the Most High, who shined on from the dirt, and I remember where I'm from. Right? Let's get into this, family. All praise to the Most High. And this is Columbus, the Conquest, and the Covenant Curses, Part 4. Massacres, terror, and the destruction of a people. Historical evidence, mass killings of the indigenous population. In a short account of the destruction of the Indies, Bartolome de las Casas wrote that after the Spaniards established themselves in the Indies, they committed widespread massacres against indigenous communities. He described soldiers entering villages and killing men, women, children, and elderly without distinction. De las Casas wrote that the Spaniards acted with strange cruelty and that their purpose was to spread terror and secure wealth, especially gold. He also wrote that countless peaceful inhabitants were slain who had never taken up arms against the Spaniards. Lamentations chapter 2 verse 21. The young and the old lie on the ground in the streets. My virgins and my young men are fallen by sword. Thou hast slain them in the day of thine anger, and thou hast killed and not pitied. Jeremiah describes a time when entire communities would be destroyed. The sword would spare neither the elderly, the young, the youth, nor the children. The devastation would be so complete that it would leave the streets without mercy. More historical evidence. The Spaniards used fear as a weapon. Casas records that the conquistadors deliberately used horrifying acts of violence to frighten entire populations into submission. Public executions, burnings, and massacres were intended to convince neighboring villages that resistance would bring complete destruction. Notice, right? Public executions and burnings, right? Kind of like what our brother Judah went through later on when, this spread to our brother Judah within the United States of America. Deuteronomy 28:67. In the morning thou shalt say, would God it were even, and at even thou shalt say, would God it were morning. Right? I wish it was over, basically. In the morning you're gonna wish it was, later on, and later on you're gonna wish it was morning. For the fear of thine heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. Moses foretold that Israel would witness such terrifying events that they would dread both day and night. Fear would become a constant part of daily life because of the horrors surrounding them. More historical evidence. War dogs used against the indigenous people. Las Casas and other early Spanish chroniclers describe the Spanish use of trained war dogs during the conquest. These dogs were released to pursue, attack, and kill indigenous people, attempt to flee or resist. The animals became instruments of warfare and intimidation. Psalms 22:16. For dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. This is talking about Yahweh Shai, Christ. But I kind of like the way this sounds because sometimes when I'm outside, I see a dog walking a dog, right? Because these people are dogs, right? These people are dogs, man. They're dogs. Even Yahweh Shai spoke to a heathen woman and said, I'm here for the sheep, man, not for the dogs, man, right? But man, these are the same people that used bloodhounds to track slaves. These are the same people that today use canines to, still catch slaves. But this right here, this scripture is not talking about actual dogs. It's talking about the people that found Yahushua, right? But like I said, dogs walking dogs. David uses dogs as a description of violent enemies surrounding the righteous. The imagery portrays relentless persecution by cruel and merciless attackers. And that's what they were, merciless attackers. But again, Psalms 22:16 is talking about Christ and about the people that they're called dogs. But there is a scripture that tells us about, how they used dogs to tear us apart. I thought I had it after this. But all praises to the Most High. All right, with Jeremiah, I'm trying to find the KJV one. All right, so this is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 15 and verse 3. And I will appoint over them 4 kinds, saith the Lord. The sword to slay, right, which these dogs were slaying us, and the dogs to tear. And that's what should be here after Psalms 22:16, right? No shame. No shame at all, family. And the fowls of the heaven and the beasts of the earth to devour and destroy. But dogs were used, unfortunately, to destroy our people, right? More historical evidence. Villages burned and destroyed. De la Casas records that Spanish forces burned entire settlements, destroyed crops, and left once thriving communities desolate. Survivors often fled into forests and mountains to escape further violence, only to face starvation and continued pursuit. Leviticus 26:31-33. And I will make your cities waste and bring your sanctuaries unto desolation, and will not smell the savor of your sweet odor. And I will bring the land into desolation, and your enemies which dwell therein shall be astonished at it. And I will scatter you among the heathen, and will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate, and your cities waste. Now, even if this is talking about a prophecy that happened before, during, or after, right? It's a continual thing. There are dual prophecies within the Bible, right? And we see things that are simply just through the Spirit, right? The Bible speaks a certain language, man, and when you realize what's going on, certain scriptures come to mind, right? This prophecy warns that Israel's cities would become ruins, their land would be devastated, and they would be scattered among foreign nations while the sword continued to pursue them, right? So we've been going through this continual thing. We've been continuously being pursued, right? So just because it happened already doesn't mean it's not happening again, right? It's still happening today. But this is just correlation from historical evidence and Bible prophecies, right? More historical evidence. A drastic population collapse. Las Casas wrote that islands once populated by vast numbers of indigenous people were left with only a small remnant after years of warfare, forced labor, starvation, and disease following Spanish conquest. While historians debate the exact pre-contact population figures, there is broad agreement that the Taino population declined catastrophically within a few decades of Columbus' arrival. Deuteronomy 28:62, and ye shall be left few in number, whereas ye were stars of heaven for multitude, because thou wouldest not obey the voice of Yahweh thy God. So Moses warned that a people once as numerous as the stars would become greatly reduced in number. The prophecy describes a dramatic loss of population following the covenant curses. The resources for this: a short account of the destruction of the Indies, Historia de las Indias, Decades of the New World, and General and Natural History of the Indies. Historical. This section combines accounts from multiple early Spanish chroniclers. While they differ on some details and numbers, they consistently describe widespread violence, forced labor, and severe population decline of the indigenous peoples following the Spanish conquest. Why is this important? Because there's going to be Edomites and other nations, or even our people that just love the other nations, are going to try to defend by saying, well, this conquistador said this, and then this conquistador said this, so they're different. Yeah, but what every conquistador says, or every Salakia, every Spanish chronicler says, is the same when it comes to widespread violence, forced labor, and severe population decline among indigenous peoples. That's what they all have in common. The brutality of what happened to the natives, right? With that, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah. That's giving all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High God, whose name is Yahweh. Ba'ashem meaning coming in the name of, and Yahweh Shah, who the world calls Jesus Christ. Shalom, and I love y'all, family.